we've come to a level where we've become comfortable because we don't have the kind of dangers, right? I mean, if you look at history, you'll see that, there's a danger of survival, danger of things like that. And so as a result, when we created a whole civilization that has been protected, that old saying that good men, creates good times, and then good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times, and hard times create, strong, and so forth, right? That whole cycle. So what we're experiencing is the cycle of that whole process. Now you can argue that cycle is smaller, so that you see that transition maybe between the different presidential cycles. Every 4 years we see the shift in back and forth. Okay, that's a very possibility.
Well, Marx predicted that the bourgeoisie would be overthrown by the proletariat, and you'd have this thing called a classless society. And, the communistic model where certain people on top control production. Yeah. They control, you can't own land. Your food is not produced by, people who can choose what to produce. Housing is not selected by individual groups of people either. So he predicted that would happen. The bourgeoisie would be overcome. What do you see happening over the next generation in our country? Because to me, I think there's going to be economic collapse, and I think there's going to be a certain amount of dystopia, and I think there's going to end up being regions of people who gravitate toward different worldviews. The people that want to be more agrarian, farmer-like folks might move to a particular region. The urban city dwellers who want to see the world in a more liberal, progressive way might move over there. And you're going to, in my view, might have different economic mechanical apparatus that undergird rather those regions. So you might have more of an agrarian machine on one part of the country, which was formerly the United States, and then you might have a little more manufacturing on another side that might be overseen by the progressive worldview there. But that's how I see it. I think we're going to have regions that was once this country. And it's not that difficult to see, because that's what happened before 1960 or 1860. You had the South, you had the North, and my dogs are agreeing with me. And then you had the wilderness of the West, the Wild West, which was really largely unpopulated. But you really had 3 regions. So, and that wasn't that long ago. That was about 120 to 140 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to return to the regionalism of what was and what I think will be. What about you? Where do you think we're going to be in 20, 30 years? Because it's not going to be this. It ain't going to be this.
Well, I mean, certainly if the trend of where things have been going continues, what you're predicting as far as an outcome is the inevitable, for sure. I mean, there's no doubt. If we don't change the course, we will end up there. Okay. Now, you can say that you can try to attempt to change the things, like, for instance, with Trump trying to get manufacturing back to the United States and so forth. We might already be too far gone, right? We might already passed the point of no return, so even if we were to try to steer this, we're going to hit that iceberg regardless. It's just that we might delay it by maybe a few years, maybe another decade or something before we hit it, But to me, what I see and where I feel like there's a challenge a lot of times in this is that because I see history repeat itself and there's these cycles, right? So even if we thwart the whole globalist, plan to destroy, what we see, if nothing changes, or if we don't completely root it, it's still gonna return, and it's gonna just come in a new form. Okay, I don't know if you saw the State of the Union, right? And
of course I did.
I sat there and I watched, and and I was really amazed by some of the things that were happening, right? I mean. Welcome back to another episode of Inside Reality. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Jimmy Tran, along with my co-host, Jeffrey Canaleria. And in today's episode, one of the things that we want to talk about is really about how is history in our time today different, right? I mean, that I think that's a really important conversation. I know we have a lot of challenges that we've dealt with in history, some of which are really, really bad. I mean, maybe heinous crimes and, against humanity and all that. And of course, we see things happening today, and, in light of some of the things that have happened that we want to kind of share and maybe talk about and see where we go from there. So Inside Reality is really a show about how we can do better and having conversation and having discussion and not really holding back and really taking an honest look, kind of why we call this naked observation, because I think that in the world where there's so much hiddenness and things, trying to make things look right and clear and all that kind of stuff. But this is like the unvarnished truth, and we want to kind of address it. Now, obviously, as an audience, you may not agree with our opinion or our assessment. We'd love to invite you to the conversation. So anyway, Jeffrey, how you doing?
I'm all right. I'm always in a bad mood. And anyway, I'm not here to change anybody's, behavior, because I think we're just kind of doomed as a country. I think it's over. I think we're going to have economic collapse and then dystopia in the next 30 years. All I'm trying to do is get people to be aware of certain constructs, certain aspects of what's going on in the human condition and this thing we call America, and just call it for what it is. And then people can do whatever they want. But I just don't think particularly people in media that control information and control headlines, talk about obvious things. And that's what we're trying to do, I think, or that's what I'm trying to do with this show, is talk about obvious things, call out the hypocrisy, and then people can do whatever the hell they want with that information. I'll give you an example. That poor lady that was abducted? I don't know whatever happened to her, the lady in Tucson.
Yeah. I haven't found her yet, as far as I understand.
Well, as of this moment.
Yeah.
But what was interesting to me, for the first 3 weeks of, post-abduction, all you saw on any media channel of any consequence was that story. It was just like, all we heard about was the story, that story, that story. And then think about the millions and millions of dollars of resources in Tucson that were devoted to this poor lady's tragedy, right?
Yeah.
I'm talking about the FBI. I'm talking about the state police. I'm talking about the Tucson police.
Yeah.
I'm talking about media covering it almost 24/7. Well, guess what? It's not even covered now. So what changed? And the other thing is, what about the rest of us in society that have had tragedies with our grandmothers, with our aunts, with our sisters, with our mothers, with our family members? Nobody devoted that kind of resource or media attention to our plight. So again, I feel bad for the family and the poor lady. But what about the rest of us in this thing called America, when we've had familial tragedy? Nobody gave a crap. Nobody covered our stories like that was covered. And now, sadly, at another layer of this question, she's not even being covered anymore. The grandma.
Yeah.
I have no idea what's happened to her in the last 4 or 5 days, because the same media that was like ad nauseum covering this poor tragic story, it's nowhere. It's crickets. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think that there's a few things that are happening. I mean, there were other events that were happening that was definitely not favorable, and so, like, for instance, there was a lot of attention right before this, there was a lot of attention given to the fraud that was happening in Minnesota, for instance. And right. So there was enough attention to where it was driving the news cycle. And we know that the news cycle has a window in which it does its thing. Okay, so that's really important part. I think we have to understand that the news window is either a week long. I mean, there's different aspects to it. I mean, there's different people will explain. Okay, you have a 24-hour news cycle, or you have a 48-hour. You have a 1 week news cycle. So So depending on the topic, it will roll through those news cycle, which is, again, part of it too is in our modern age where we have information instantly about everything, right? I mean, pretty much. I mean, what you had for dinner can be national news in an instant if whoever is involved, is interested in bringing it on and amplifying that. And so I think that
are you saying then what if a story is about an individual tragedy, depending on where that person occupies the hierarchical elite space, they're going to be afforded much more attention?
That's one level, yes.
Well, the example is this grandmother was.
Yeah, there was a celebrity. Yeah,
a celebrity's grandmother.
The mother of a celebrity. Yes.
Yeah, fine.
So,
but if it's the average grandmother that's abducted somewhere else, obviously they're not going to command the same ransom and all that, but it's not going to command the same kind of attention either if you're lower in the caste system in America. That's why this fallacy that everybody in America has equal rights and we're all citizens and we're all afforded the same, luxuries of rights and all this. It's a farce. It's a spurious, nonsensical farce. If you're a celebrity or you occupy elite status in this country, you are afforded so much more privilege.
But there's not any. Yeah, but that hasn't changed from history. I mean, in terms of history,
I know,
that hasn't
but
changed
nobody
any,
says that out loud.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think that you're right.
The donut-eating politicians don't say it on either side.
Yeah.
They won't say it out loud. That elitism is a real thing. I mean, the woke part. I'll give the woke part of the liberal construct some credit because they did call out about 5 years ago, maybe a little longer, white privilege in America. I used to resist that as a notion, but that's a real thing.
Well,
and I'll give them a little credit because I mean I think they use it as a manipulative apparatus to destroy the people that don't agree with their worldview. But this white supremacy elite framework is a real thing in America.
On some level it is, but I don't think it's just white. I mean, it's really whatever the dominant society is the driver. I mean,
it's not only white, but if you've got money and you've got power and influence, you also occupy that same framework.
Again, what else is new? I mean, that's history. I mean, if you look at history, you see all these levels of injustices, if you want to.
The Republicans don't call it out. The conservatives don't call it out. I'm a reluctant Republican. I have not heard a conservative Republican that occupies any space and influence say, you know what, there is a white elitist framework in our country, and there is an elite, depending on how much money and power you have, framework in our country that does exist. I have not heard Hannity, Laura Ingraham, any of those schmucks on Fox say that out loud. And I'm a Republican.
Yeah.
I'm saying it. It exists. It doesn't define me. I'm not whining about it. I just try to maneuver around and through it.
Yeah, I mean that is one part of it. I think there's different aspects of it too. I mean, like I said, if you're in China, okay, the dominant group that's in China is the Han Chinese, which is the largest ethnic, or because the Chinese population is pretty broad in terms of different people groups, okay? And so the Han Chinese group in China is the largest. And so they, of course, command a great number. I mean, the smaller groups are like the Uyghurs, for instance, that are in the western part of China, are being persecuted. Nobody talks about that, right? And then even if you do, you get sidelined on a number of different levels. A lot of minorities don't have that. So it's not. That's what I'm saying is that the white argument is a fallacy on one level because it's just because we're in this Western world where white dominance have existed because they're from Europe. I mean, the European dominant,
we're talking about America and the United States. I'm not talking about Indonesia.
Okay,
I'm not talking
fine.
about North Vietnam. I'm not talking about Scotland because we don't live there. We live in this place called the United States. So
True.
that's the context. That's the world in which we live.
Sure.
So and by the way, you got to remember the Chinese, their whole worldview is based on a group. a collective. Our America was founded on the individual. And I would also argue, and if you want to do this on this show, I'll do it. The death of the individual has been happening for the last 20, 30 years.
Oh, more than that.
Okay, fine.
Yeah,
but if you want to talk about that could be at the very essence.
It is
the very apotheosis of what's gone on with corruption, with distraction, with hypocrisy, with the Democratic and the Republic machine basically just taking over completely, along with the institutional bureaucrats, because the individual has been dying a slow death for the last 20 or 30 years, maybe longer.
Yeah. I mean, yes, the collectivist, methodology is the one driver first. I mean, if you look, I just recently, and I'll have to post it in the description here, so you guys can follow along with it. But what's really interesting is that if you follow our educational system, you can see kind of where that transition occur. Okay, a lot of this transition occur when really I'm gonna bring it right out, and that is the Marxist ideology, which is basically driving between the haves and the have-nots and the class divisions. Okay. And what they found, and this is really interesting that you brought this up, because what they found is that in the United States, the ability to drive a wedge between the have and the have-not, and the disparity was so different because we have a strong middle class. Okay, and because we have a strong middle class, the whole class warfare that they were trying to instill didn't work. Okay, so they shifted their model to subdivide us into other sectionalities that we know of today, so that now it's within the racial lines, it's within the different disability and minority lines. All those lines.
Are you black? Are you Hispanic? Are you Latin? All right.
So that has been more effective because of the fact that we are a society that is made up of all these varieties of individuals, okay? And because we had such a strong middle class, as a result of the strong middle class, the idea of having because remember when the Marxist model was set up, it was set up to say, okay, you've got the proletariat, and then you've got, whatever the other group is. I forget the whole
bourgeoisie.
The bourgeoisie. Yeah, thank you. And so you have this dichotomy between the two, and so that's if you look at the old world, that's how the old world was more or less established, right? And so when you have a very small and weak middle class, there's an easy way to kind of just create that wedge and division.
This is Inside Reality. We're with you every week. Please share, dislike, do whatever you want, but at least think about what we talk about. So you're talking about Marx, okay? And he talked about there were two classes. There were the proletariat, which was the labor that ultimately was exploited by the bourgeoisie, who controlled the machinery, if you will. They controlled production.
Correct.
And he said, and I think he made some sense, that the people that were oppressed, just like the French Revolution, just like the Roman Empire, what's kind of happening on the streets of America today in certain blue cities, people feel oppressed, they overcome the bourgeoisie. In this case, the buffer has always been the middle class.
Correct.
To your point, the reality is, the middle class is not nearly as strong as it was in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. That middle class has either died off because of old age, or they've weakened themselves because of economic degradation.
Both.
So now the Marxist model is becoming more emergent, manifest, just like the Andromeda Galaxy is coming closer, literally every second, to this thing called the Milky Way, and ultimately will collide. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but it's much more pronounced that you have the elites, the haves, including the media, including the political people, including the bureaucrats who are institutionalized, including the wealthy, and then you have the rest of us that used to occupy most of the middle class, but the middle class is now actually assimilated with some of the poorer populations in our country. So we are becoming a two-class population because the middle class is being squeezed out.
Yeah.
A lot of it is because of age, and a lot of it is because of economic degradation.
Yeah, and then there's actually a third reason for that, and that is, because we live in a society where individual, I mean, the participation of the individual is really an important part of it, and so we've come to a level where we've become comfortable because we don't have the kind of dangers, right? I mean, if you look at history, you'll see that, there's a danger of survival, danger of things like that. And so as a result, when we created a whole civilization that has been protected, that old saying that good men, creates good times, and then good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times, and hard times create, strong, and so forth, right? That whole cycle. So what we're experiencing is the cycle of that whole process. Now you can argue that cycle is smaller, so that you see that transition maybe between the different presidential cycles. Every 4 years we see the shift in back and forth. Okay, that's a very possibility.
Well, Marx predicted that the bourgeoisie would be overthrown by the proletariat, and you'd have this thing called a classless society. And, the communistic model where certain people on top control production.
Yeah.
They control, you can't own land. Your food is not produced by, people who can choose what to produce. Housing is not selected by individual groups of people either. So he predicted that would happen. The bourgeoisie would be overcome. What do you see happening over the next generation in our country? Because to me, I think there's going to be economic collapse, and I think there's going to be a certain amount of dystopia, and I think there's going to end up being regions of people who gravitate toward different worldviews. The people that want to be more agrarian, farmer-like folks might move to a particular region. The urban city dwellers who want to see the world in a more liberal, progressive way might move over there. And you're going to, in my view, might have different economic mechanical apparatus that undergird rather those regions. So you might have more of an agrarian machine on one part of the country, which was formerly the United States, and then you might have a little more manufacturing on another side that might be overseen by the progressive worldview there. But that's how I see it. I think we're going to have regions that was once this country. And it's not that difficult to see, because that's what happened before 1960 or 1860. You had the South, you had the North, and my dogs are agreeing with me. And then you had the wilderness of the West, the Wild West, which was really largely unpopulated. But you really had three regions. And that wasn't that long ago. That was about 120 to 140 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to return to the regionalism of what was and what I think will be. What about you? Where do you think we're going to be in 20, 30 years? Because it's not going to be this. It ain't going to be this.
Well, I mean, certainly if the trend of where things have been going continues, what you're predicting as far as an outcome is the inevitable, for sure. I mean, there's no doubt. If we don't change the course, we will end up there. Okay. Now, you can say that you can try to attempt to change the things, like, for instance, with Trump trying to get manufacturing back to the United States and so forth. We might already be too far gone, right? We might already passed the point of no return, so even if we were to try to steer this, we're going to hit that iceberg regardless. It's just that we might delay it by maybe a few years, maybe another decade or something before we hit it, But to me, what I see and where I feel like there's a challenge a lot of times in this is that because I see history repeat itself and there's these cycles, right? So even if we thwart the whole globalist, plan to destroy, what we see, if nothing changes, or if we don't completely root it it's still going to return, and it's going to just come in a new form. Okay, I don't know if you saw the State of the Union, right? And
Of course I did.
I sat there and I watched, and and I was really amazed by some of the things that were happening, right? I mean, of course, Trump's going to do Trump's thing, right? But what was more interesting is to watch kind of the audience and the groups and what they stood for, what they didn't stand on, and things like that. And
exactly.
that was quite interesting. And to me, it was the most telling.
This is Inside Reality. We're with you every week. So when Trump said, everybody should stand for what I'm going to say, and he said something so self-evident, so palpably what's supposed to be the American way that our founders created, that all the great presidents propagated, that we say that we espouse as a frickin' country by raising our little hands to the flag every time we say the national anthem. And it was this. He said, everybody should stand. Every citizen is more important than an illegal alien. That's essentially what he said. And we should protect the rights of American citizens first before illegal aliens. And half of the audience there, the Democrats did not stand for that. And you're telling me that this country is going to survive?
Not when it's that divided on something really fundamental. It's
beyond fundamental. That's at the very fulcrum. That's the very essence of what this country was founded on, to be an American citizen, imbued with the rights that the Constitution is supposed to provide, and further supplemented by the Bill of Rights 15, 20 years after the Constitution was incepted. It was all to provide the sanctity of the American citizen. And Trump was just reminding the country of that. And half the country doesn't believe that should happen. And part of it is because they hate Trump enough, but that still doesn't matter. They still will espouse anything that's anti-Trump, including that very basic, rudimentary, foundational truth that's supposed to be imbued upon the American citizen.
Well, before you go as far as concluding that that's half the country, okay, I want to clarify, or at least, maybe point out that these are half the representative of the country, okay? Because we know that the representatives, our general representatives have not always have the best interests of the people. Okay.
I'm talking about the representatives and the senators today.
Correct. Yeah. No.
If you put a microphone to any one of those Democrats, any of the Democrat senators, or any congressperson of any consequence, and you said, "Did you agree with what Trump said about what I just articulated?" They will say on record, "No."
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Is that, but the representative, you can argue, is not completely always in alignment with the people. So what we will know is whether those people are going to be reelected.
They command the pocketbook of our country is Congress, the House of Representatives.
I get that. Now the people now gets to answer that question. Okay, so if the people
70% of the people don't even vote. Dude, 60% of the population doesn't even know what the difference between a congressperson and a senator and the executive branch and the judicial branch. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Again, part of it,
dude.
Again, I agree with you that there's that issue, and there's a number of different pieces to it. So here's the thing that I also thought was interesting too, that I think is need to be pointed out, right? In the United States, citizenship is automatic in terms of apportionment of citizenship is not voluntary. It's basically you're a citizen automatically because you're born here. Okay, that is the move. So think about this for a moment. If citizen is mandatory and obligatory, then that poses its own issue in terms of the whole idea of freedom, right? So that's the first part. What are you following what I'm saying? Like you're
No.
born here, you're automatically a citizen.
No.
You don't get
No.
to choose whether you're a citizen or not.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything anymore because the Democrats have said they don't care if you're a citizen. People that weren't born here should be afforded the same rights as
No, no.
citizens. They get to vote.
No,
They
I
get to
get that
drive
part.
cars. They get to, basically enjoy the same privileges
or more. Yeah, in
or
some
more.
cases.
And
Yeah.
the rest of us have to pay for that.
Yeah.
Including the whole anchor baby thing, where you come here across the border illegally, you bear a child, and that child is now a citizen.
Because you get the certificate. That's what I'm saying. Is that it because we have that as our system of frame. I mean, that's the framework that we're working from. To me, I think that's where part of the problem lies in this. Okay, because if you come from another country, you come here and you say, oh, okay, you raise your hand and you want to be a citizen, boom, then you become a citizen. Versus when you're born here, regardless, you don't get to
you
choose.
have to be naturalized. What are you talking about?
Yeah, when you
have to go through that process.
No, I understand that. No.
No.
I understand there's a process. I'm just explaining that there's a difference between the automatic induction versus a decision that's made for citizenship. Okay, so here's why I'm going with that, right? Because if you're born here and you don't have access to, for whatever reason, like the Amish, where you don't have access to all the communication and all the technology that brings all that stuff in, right? You won't know if raw milk is now illegal because some bureaucrat decided that that's not healthy, whatever. Right now we're dealing with seed oil, and so seed oil is not that it's illegal, but I
don't know what your point is. What's your point?
My point is that we live in a mixed world where you have individuals that you say, okay, well, they don't vote. Well, they don't vote for a number of reasons. Among them includes the fact that they don't, for whatever reason, they decide, okay, yes, I may be born here, and yes, citizenship was given to me as my inheritance or whatever at birth, and therefore I get the citizenship, but that doesn't mean that I, am obligated or that I even want to participate in the whole system. Okay, you follow what I'm getting at, right?
Yeah, but I don't know what your point is. I get that, but what's your point? How does it relate to the topic?
My point is that there's a difference here in terms of the model that we're dealing with, because when you have governance that is driven by this framework that is based on a decision that you want to be a participant in it, right? That means that you have to actually take actions and you have to take steps in that regard, okay? And so our hopes is, of course, we have a child and that child grows up and through the educational system is informed enough to basically, not only make decisions, but also make wise decisions, in terms of
all right.
the best.
I don't know what the hell you just said. What I'm saying is even the status, even the position that you occupy as an American citizen does not mean what it did 50 years ago.
Sure.
That's what I'm saying. Because most of the Democrat woke part of the machine has degraded what it means to be a citizen by basically diluting its status, its influence, its individual presence, its individual power, its individual gravitas, by affording much more resource, status, and all the other things that were afforded to and assigned to be a U.S. citizen to non-citizens. And in doing so, the progressive woke part of the machine has assigned that much more power and influence to non-citizens, and in doing so, concomitantly and simultaneously, it has degraded the status, the power, the influence that the individual United States citizen had. And that's a big problem, my friend. That's a big problem, and nobody talks about that.
Yeah. And I think that
the dilution of the status of the individual citizen has been degraded.
Yeah. One of the things that struck me also is that it felt like that side or the perspective is that we're more of a united nation than we are a United States.
I can see that.
Right? I mean, to me, I think that's part of why that whole positioning, because when you look at it, the United States is unique in the sense that you have the constitutionality that basically divides up the people, not based on their ethnic identity, not based on their so to me that underscores the issue, think more so than anything else.
You remember the Jerry Lewis telethon? You're probably too young to know, right?
I remember seeing it. Yeah,
there were a lot of people that would accuse Jerry Lewis of using the little wheelchair muscular dystrophy kids as props.
Yeah,
and you're talking about
but he was raising money for them.
Well, fine.
Yeah,
but a lot of people were very critical of you're using that kid as a prop.
Sure.
Trump definitely used the hockey team as a prop, and he used all those people as props.
Yeah.
But you know what? So did the Democrats.
Yeah.
So does everybody else. My point is, did Trump use his props better than Biden when he was doing the same thing?
Yeah.
And again, all we're trying to do on this show is call out that this stuff happens, man.
Correct.
And don't be a hypocrite because both sides use props.
Absolutely.
And people as props.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of who did a better job of using people as props. That's all we're trying to accomplish with this show is calling out that obvious elephant in the room, man. Did Trump use the hockey team as a prop? Yes.
Yeah.
Did Biden use whatever the hell he did with as human props? Yes.
Yeah.
All we're saying is be aware that these Republicans and these Democrats that have your power do the same damn thing, man.
Yeah.
And just be aware of it because it happens on both sides.
Yeah, it does. So the question is, what can we do about that? I mean, I know that in your mind,
start being aware of it, man.
Well, yeah.
Start calling out the hypocrisy on both sides. If you're a Democrat, call out your own congressperson for doing whatever the hell they do, or senator for doing the hell. They do this. They live in privilege while you don't. They tell you what you can eat, where to live, what kind of school you should attend, but they send their kids to private school, my friend, and they're eating steak Diane Oscar style every night, and they're drinking the fine wines, and they're going to all the little cocktail parties. You're not. And they do it on both sides, man. And that's all I'm saying. Call it out.
Yeah.
Pelosi is protected by people with guns. She lives in a mansion with a big, tall wall. Yet she wants an open border and she doesn't want you to own your gun. That's all I'm saying. Call all of them out for what they're doing to all of us. But we've allowed it to happen.
Yeah, we do. And that's part of what we're saying here is that if we want any of that to be different, then we got to decide differently, got to choose differently and change. I mean, that to me, that's one of the unique aspects of the United States is that we do, have that option. Okay. In the case of history, if you were to look at history, I don't think there's any other place where you could have gained that.
No, the Roman Republic, the senators called out the councils.
Yeah.
They called it even to a certain period. You were able to call out certain emperors.
Yeah.
So that's not true. The Republic, well, again,
the Republic is different. Yeah.
Our system is designed
modeled
on
after
the Roman Republic because you had the Assembly, you had the Senate, you had the consulship, you had the tribunes, and each of those occupied a position that we call, the legislative branch of our country, the executive branch of our country,
and the judicial,
the House of Representatives. The judiciary a little different because the judiciary component within the Republic was, if I'm remembering, were the quaestors. There was a certain population called the quaestors, and I think they're the ones that dealt with law, if I remember. And then the praetors. The praetors dealt with law. The quaestors dealt with finance. Anyway,
Okay.
but our whole system is based on the Roman Republic for the most part. A little bit of the Greek democracy, but the Greek democracy didn't really last very long. I don't know
No,
if
they
you're-
didn't. Well, that's
It lasted only about 150 years or something,
Yeah.
as I recall.
well,
Because of
that's
mob rule. Because
exactly
of the mob rule thing.
because that's the problem with democracy is that when you don't have there's once the mob figure out that they can vote for themselves all the stuff, which is what we're seeing, we're in right now, right? I mean, you look, the senators, all the leadership, they get to have all this goodies. I mean, they don't have the same health plans that the rest of us get. They don't have the same, they don't. They have their own pension and all that kind of stuff. Even after I think 2 years, that's it. They have one term. They were in for 2 years. They get it. And
they have all their little lackeys to go get them Starbucks lattes every morning.
Well,
look how fat and disgustingly out of shape they are because they don't do anything, man.
Yeah.
They don't even drive. They live in their little mansions, and they do not occupy the same world that most of the rest of Middle America lives.
Yeah.
Yet they tell you they're fighting for you. The Republicans say that. The Democrat senators say that. We're fighting for you. But they don't live the same life that most middle class, lower middle class, or poor Americans live at all. Give me a break, man.
So there was
So pathetic.
There was a moment there in the whole State of Union that I saw, part of it. I watched the replay, and that I thought was interesting is that when there was a call to end the inside trading, for the Congress. And I was actually surprised that there were quite a few, even on the Democratic side.
Pelosi did not stand up.
Well, I don't know if she was there.
That
Was she there?
Omar chick didn't stand up. Pelosi was there.
Okay. I thought she's finished with her term. Maybe not.
Pelosi was in the damn audience.
Okay.
She was there, contorting her face because she hates Trump. She tore up the speech and all that. Nobody called her on that.
Yeah.
What about protocol? What about respecting,
the office,
our system of governance?
Yeah.
The protocols of the office. Nobody called her on that on the Democratic side. Who does that, man? Who does that? I might have. But I'm not the senator. I'm not the Speaker of the House.
Yeah.
But what the hell?
Yeah.
All right, got about 3 minutes.
All right. So if you were so you mentioned the Roman Republic, and I know that historians have pointed out that a democracy, or this type of form of government historically have not lasted more than 250 years. That's been kind of the top time frame, right?
Well, there's not been a system like ours that's ever been tested beyond what we're doing.
Correct.
Other than the Republic lasted for 500 years, so I don't know what the hell you're talking about. The Republic actually lasted 500 years, and it was intact, and it was actually fairly functional for 500 years until Caesar was assassinated, and then you had a 20-year civil war, and then Caesar's adopted nephew, Octavius Augustus, became the first emperor, and even at that point, he attempted to keep the Republic in place almost in theory.
Yeah.
But that's not a completely true statement. Everybody says no one's ever done what we've done for 250 years. The Republic lasted for 500 years.
Unfortunately, I don't know enough to be able to challenge your numbers, but I'll study up on that.
Study up, and next week you can correct me or do whatever the hell you want.
I'll correct you next week. Yeah.
That'll be an astonishing, miraculous moment, but you can try. All right, man. This is Inside Reality. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, please like and share.
Do what you will, but at least start thinking about what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
Because for the most part, we're just pawns in this little manipulative game, and all we can do is at least be aware of it and start calling it out. But it has to start with us. Each of us.
Yes.
Whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, or you don't care, at least be aware of what's going on.
All right. Take care.
All right, man.
See you guys next time. Now that we've got some of our technical issues solved, we'll be more regular in the show. All right.
Exactly.
Later.
Thank you.